People who saved themselves for marriage and eventually got divorced. What was your approach towards ex after the divorce? In our conservative Lebanese society, after the first divorce, you get a free pass actually. Some people would talk about you, but a lot of conservative people would just tell them she's divorced, she can do what she wants. From what I've been told, my GF, Greek culture is very similar. You get a black mark which can be seen as bad, or completely liberating. Greek here. That's totally true. I'm in my mid-30s, divorced. Greeks usually don't get divorced, so I'm the black sheep. The old ladies at church ask if I'm dating, going out, etc. I feel like they're trying to live through me vicariously, and now half of Reddit is doing it too. This doesn't apply to me, but I do have a friend who is in this boat. His approach has been to swear off relationships and be celibate for the rest of his life. Well, that's one way to handle it, I guess. Sounds like he will be the only one handling it. That was good. Just like his favorite Star Wars character, Han Solo. Mum didn't have ex for 8 years after getting divorced. She's a devoted Christian for sure. Unfortunately, she got drunk and ruined her 8 year streak. Got it on with my boyfriend's dad. Sigh. Are you going to be dating your stepbro here soon? Write this down, Peanut people. I'm fairly certain they have this one covered already. This was my wife. We've been divorced for 3 years and I'm pretty sure she hasn't had ex since, and won't until she gets married again. So, she's apparently been true to her principles. Good question. I'm an ex-Mormon and was a virgin when I got married at 21. Was married for over 6 years. Had a good, active ex-life. And when I got divorced 2 years back, it was a strange new world. I was excited to have ex with new people, but I quickly found after a handful of hookups that it wasn't always that great. There were some exceptions, obviously, but I often find that people who haven't been in long-term relationships are pretty lousy in bed. Having a bunch of one-night stands doesn't make you better at freaking emo. Getting to know someone's body and experimenting does. If I could do it over again, I wouldn't have saved myself for marriage. The best ex I've had has been after my divorce. I have a general rule now that I won't have ex on the first date. I like having more of an emotional connection with the other person. It's more enjoyable that way for me. Having a bunch of one-night stands doesn't make you better at frigging emo. Getting to know someone's body and experimenting does. This, so much. My ex would be so proud of how many women he'd slept with in his life. But that didn't make him great at ex. His style was of someone who had slept around a lot, but never really got to know a woman's body intimately. The guy I'm dating now. Huge difference in the way he holds and touches me. Even the way he kisses. You can tell he has learned how to take care of a woman. I dated a guy for a short time who was selfish, pushy and crap in bed. He would constantly bring up stories that gave him an excuse to talk about girls he'd frigged. He'd be telling me this awesome story about some crazy traveling experience, then just end it by yeah, sorry, but I had ex with her. Like, the story still made sense without telling me that. He told me he'd stopped counting at 51 night stands. He was absolutely terrible at ex, and the worst thing was, he wouldn't listen. You get better at ex by communicating and listening to what your partner wants. He did pretty much the opposite. I saved myself for marriage and thought my fiancé was super sweet and supportive for waiting with me, even though he didn't want to. Turns out he was so okay with it, because he was doing other chicks behind my back. And he didn't stop doing other chicks when we got married either. Once we got divorced, I pretty much just didn't care anymore. I'm still not capable of having ex with someone I don't believe I'm in love with, but I don't care about virginity or body count or anything like that anymore. I've had 5 long-term boyfriends, so I've slept with 5 people total. I don't ever feel bad about it or regret sleeping with them. And I don't feel like having one-night stands or casual ex is a bad thing by any means either. I just personally don't want to have ex with someone unless I believe I'm in love with them. Updates for those who have asked. I don't think I've actually been in love 5 times, but I thought I was in love 5 times, if that makes sense. I am still with my most recent boyfriend, who I've been with for several years now, and we are getting married once things get a little closer to normal in the world. So stop asking for my number. More updates. I realized that my wording in the original post may have been a bit misleading. We both came from very religious backgrounds and were both raised to wait until marriage to have ex. He told me this was what he wanted as well, but that he had struggled with it all his life. He constantly told me that I was his rock and I kept him on the right path, etc., etc. Throughout all of this time, he was seeing other women behind my back while telling me to my face that I was helping him overcome his temptations. I was very open about the fact that he could come to me if he ever decided waiting wasn't for him, and we could decide what to do then, but he never did, regardless of what happened while we were dating and engaged. Once we were married, I was always open and willing to have X. I've always had an extremely high X drive, call it the church girl syndrome. However, even when we're having X, he still continued to sleep with other women on a regular basis. This led to him getting another woman pregnant, which was the final nail in the coffin for granting me a divorce. When he finally came clean during the divorce, he said that he had lost count of all of the women he'd slept with while we were married. Well, the shotgun-toting father of the woman he accidentally knocked up while we were married forced him to marry her literally the day he legally could after our divorce. He got dishonorably discharged from the Navy Reserves for domestic abuse, and fired from his job at the local prison, presumably for the same reason. He now works for his father-in-law's arborist business in Wisconsin, supporting his stay-at-home wife and their 3 or 4 children. The end. Final update. I am nowhere near as religious as I was back then, and I obviously have very different beliefs about X before marriage and now. When I got married, I was a teen and had been very sheltered. Since then, I have lived all over the country and seen plenty of things to help me broaden my mind and learn that there's more to the world than what you learn in church in a small Midwest town. I'm glad you found your sexuality within your comfort zone. I wasn't one to save myself, and I'm not against casual stuff, but don't prefer it. Good for you to find where you stand on the spectrum of what's comfortable, and good for you for coming to a point where what your partner used to do doesn't matter so long as how they are with you is on the up and up. Hope you end up with someone great. Wow, what a freaking aiole. I hope he's gotten the karma he deserves. One of my lifelong friends comes from an extremely Christian family. All 3 kids were taught how bad X before marriage is. 2 of the 3 ended up with children out of wedlock. My close friend of these siblings saved herself, but ended up rushing into marriage with very little self-awareness and found herself in a completely X-ly, and otherwise, incompatible marriage. All 3 are divorced at least once now. One has more baby mama s than I can keep track of. After my friend's divorce, she abandoned the no X before marriage business. She didn't have any wild escapades, but developed strong XO, and otherwise, chemistry with her now husband. Her parents still tried to shame them. It was a clusterfuck to watch over the years. Got married in my mid-20s, not realizing that sexuality was even a thing, let alone that I could possibly apply to a good Christian boy who had saved himself. Purity culture in some Christian circles can be a really rough time. We were married for about a year and a half, and I only ever came once from X or Xual interaction with her. It was really rough for both of us. The hits to her self-esteem, the belief that I was broken in some way. Over time we just stopped really trying. A whole lot of other factors played into the split, but that was definitely one of them. I spent a couple of years after avoiding all possible romantic entanglements, then ventured out a little and found some open-minded people who I briefly dated here or there. It was nice to be close to someone again, and I have found that I really like making other people have a good time. There is something immensely satisfying to me to be the cause of someone else's satisfaction, but it can be a little hard for a partner since I am so devoid of sexual reaction. It takes a fair bit of reassurance and good communication to keep that stuff good and healthy, and so they don't feel like they are using me or that I find them repulsive or whatever. Still a work in progress, I guess. Didn't think I'd figure out I was ace from reading a comment on this post, but here we are, Mayo. Glad to my experience is useful in some way. I guess my only advice is not to jump to any conclusions too fast unless you are really sure. It took me some time to really settle into my own sexual identity, and I do have one of those, despite not wanting X things done to me. But I know for some people a label or word just clicks perfectly. Feels like putting on the most comfortable clothes ever, and that's them for life. Be aware that sexual identity can change, and that it's okay for it to do so. I had to learn not to blame myself or feel like I had screwed up, but rather was learning about myself, finding my most comfortable fit for this stage in my life. Anyway, enjoy discovering yourself. Your experience is valid, valuable and important. I knew a girl that was very hands-off prior to marriage. I never really thought too much about it until I went to her wedding, and before they kissed, the pastor made the announcement that this will be their first kiss, and I was blown away that they have never kissed before. But after there you may now kiss the bride kiss. It was obviously their first kiss. The rest of the wedding and reception went well enough, and I heard nothing from them for a few months until someone told me they are getting a divorce. Less than 6 months later. I have a few theories on why. I think the bride Ezekiel and either never realized it or did not reveal that prior to getting married, she got a bunch of tattoos after the divorce. Full chest ink, sleeves, but I never heard of her dating after. But we're not close. One of my best friends is getting married next year to a girl he's been with for something like 10 years. He said he can count on one hand how many times they've had sex in that time frame. I don't know if they're both equal and just want life partners or what the deal is, but it caught me off guard for sure. Huli, that's next level. I'm either happy they found each other or super sad for one of them. Did he seem upset when he said this?